What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another gear setup guide video. In this video, we're going to be checking out Kirill Susaroth, who is the Zamorakian general in the God Wars dungeon. So as usual with this video, we're going to be checking out best in slot all the way down to a budget gear setup for this boss. Now, to be honest, Zamorak's God Wars dungeon is more of a high risk, low reward boss. There's not really too much money to be made here when compared to the other God Wars dungeon bosses, so regardless of that, it is pretty common to have this as a Slayer task, which can up the profit per hour because obviously you'll be doing more damage, but we will talk about that as we get through the video. Alright, so let's get into this. We are going to go over the tank setups first, and we're going to start out with the best in slot tank setup. For this setup, we are going to be using the full Justiciar set, which does reduce the damage based on the attack style that the boss you are fighting is using. So for example, if it is using stab plus 454, it will reduce by a percentage of that. Also, we will have the Infernal Cape, but if you don't have one of those, a Fire Cape is just fine. Amulet of Blood Fury for that healing passive effect. A Rada's Blessing if you have it, if not, any other blessing will work. We're going to be using a Zamorakian Hasta as the weapon. One, because this will act as our Zamorak item in the God Wars dungeon to keep them off of us while we're getting kill count. And two, because it does give additional defense bonuses. Elysian Spirit Shield, very expensive at the time of this video. I think the cost is around 990 mil. It is best in slot, but obviously if you can't afford that, you can use something like a Dragonfire Shield, which is pretty good too. Barrow's Gloves, Guardian Boots because they give good defense bonus, and a Ring of Suffering imbued. So you can see over there on the right, the defense bonus is 454 to stab and slash, 447 to crush, even plus 16 to magic with this setup. Not good, but at least it's in the positives, and 464 to ranged. Over in our inventory, we have a full set of Guthans for healing on the minions after the boss is dead. As a tank, you definitely want to have that. 4 antidote pluses, and each one of these will provide 48 minutes of anti-poison. So you can opt to replace some of your super restores and the antidote pluses with Samfu serums, which act as a super restore plus an anti-poison. Each one of those doses is only 6 minutes compared to these as 12 minutes. Now I will say this, the Zamorak boss drops super restores about 1 in every 15 kills, so you're bound to see quite a few of them if you have a long trip there, so you wouldn't really have to worry about restocking on your super restores. I also have 2 Saradomin Brews in there, and that is for panic eats, just in case you might need it. Zamorak does hit through prayer, so that could be a problem. 6 Anglerfish. I have the SGS in there, also with some extra heals, and as the tank, you can bring Nature Runes and Fire Runes in your rune pouch for alching rune drops, as well as Law Runes, and this will act as the Trollheim teleport to get you there. And if you're at the end of the trip, you don't really need to worry. You can just use Home Teleport to get yourself out. As for the total gear cost of this setup, 1.112 billion. And as I mentioned earlier, that is attributed to the Elysian Spirit Shield being around 990 mil at the time of this video. So if you don't have that, you can opt to get a Dragonfire Shield, which will make your gear setup cost way cheaper and much more affordable. 100 and some million is a lot more easily achievable than 1.122 billion, so the choice is yours based on the items you have. Next up, we will jump into the cheap tank setup, and even this one is still pretty good for a much less cost. So for this one, we're going to be using the Guthan's Helmet, Guthan's Plate Body, and the Guthan's Chain Skirt as our main armor items, and the reason being is because they do offer pretty good bonuses, and you can save some inventory space by not taking switches. I'll also be using the Fire Cape, but if you have an Infernal Cape, might as well use that. Amulet of Fury. In the Blessing slot, we have a Zamorak Blessing to act as our Zamorak item to keep them off of us. That doesn't eat up an inventory space, and it's useful. Arclight is going to be our attacking weapon. Now, you could choose to use something else, but the Arclight is free to use. All it takes is the time to accumulate the shards to charge it up. So I would definitely suggest using that, especially as the tank, because it does have a special attack that will reduce defense on demon class monsters. But we do also have a Bandos Godsword in the inventory. We'll get to that in a second. Dragonfire Shield as our offhand shield slot, and this provides really good defense bonuses when it is equipped. If you can't even afford this with your gear setup, you could opt for a Crystal Shield, Barrow's Gloves, Dragon Boots, and a Granite Ring imbued in the ring slot. So this brings our defense bonuses to 378 for stab, 385 slash, 366 crush, 31 to magic, and 394 to range. And for the cost, that's not bad at all. I mean, you're not too far under the Justiciar and Elysian setup. You're just not getting that passive damage reduction with the Justiciar and the Elysian shield. Now it is about 70 below, but regardless, for the cost, we're still looking pretty good for this. Over in the inventory, we have our Guthan Spear, and this is to complete the Guthan set for those healing effects on the minions. I also have a Bandos Godsword here, which is nice to have if you can afford it in your gear setup. It will reduce defense levels by flat levels. Obviously not as good as Dragon Warhammer, but if you don't even have the money for a Bandos Godsword and you're still tanking, you can rely on the Arclight spec. It will reduce defense from demon class monsters, like I said. We have 4 Antidote pluses. Once again, 48 minutes of anti-poison per potion, 10 Super Restores, 8 Ceradomin Brews, 3 Anglerfish, and once again in our rune pouch, Nature's Fires and Law Runes. Now with this setup, you are inevitably going to take more damage than you would with the Justiciar Elysian set, which is the reason for the 8 brews. If you think that you're even going to be cutting it close with that, you could opt to replace a couple of the Anglerfish with 2 more brews. As for me, I've tested this setup out, and the setup that you see in the inventory works pretty well. You can stay for about 2 hours, maybe more, with this setup. As for the total gear cost for this one, only 17.2 mil, so very affordable for most kind of low-high levels to higher levels, if that makes sense. One more thing I do want to add, both of these setups, the cheap and the best in slot tank setup, are going to be the highest defense setup, so you will actually be praying magic against the boss. He does hit through melee prayer regardless, so even with these setups, you can still pray magic and you can still tank effectively. So make sure your overhead is protect from magic with these setups. All right, next we can move into our DPS setups. We're going to start with the best in slot DPS setup. So for this one, in our helmet slot is the Nitsnot face guard. However, if you are on a Slayer task for greater demons, you will replace that helmet with a Slayer helmet. Obviously, you want that plus 15% to attack and strength. In the cape slot, we have an Inferno Cape, Amulet of Torture, Zamorak Blessing to keep the minions off you while you're getting your KC. Our weapon and offhand are going to be the Arclight and the Avernic Defender, Bandos Chestplate and Bandos Tassets, Ferocious Gloves, Primordial Boots, and a Berserker's Ring imbued. Now we'll notice here that our attack bonuses are kind of crappy, and our melee strength is also kind of crappy, but we do have to remember, with the Arclight against demon class monsters, you will be getting a plus 70% boost to attack and strength. Over in our inventory, we have a full set of Guthans for the healing on the minions after the boss is dead. Our special attack weapon with our best in slot DPS setup is actually going to be Dragon Claws. They are the best special attack weapon to use here, regardless of whether you have a Dragon Warhammer or a Bandos Godsword. If you do have Dragon Claws, you do want to use those as your special attack weapon. 3 Anglerfish for emergency eats, 8 super combat divine potions, and each of these will last you 20 minutes. So it's going to be a good length trip if you do get through all of those. 10 super restores and 1 Sandfuse serum. You want to bring 1 Sandfuse serum just in case your tank misses or you accidentally jump the gun and attack the boss and you end up getting poisoned. Hopefully you don't do that more than 4 times because you only have 4 doses, so just be careful of that. In your rune pouch, you are going to have Earths, Waters, and Astral runes, and this will be for the lunar spells to share your restore stat potions and your super combat potions with your team. So you can spread those around throughout the trip. So for the best in slot DPS setup, we are looking at a total gear cost of 184.1 million GP. Last but not least is our cheap DPS setup, and for this one, in the helmet slot, we have a Helm of Nitsnot, but if you're on a Slayer task, once again, wear that Slayer helmet for the plus 15% boost to accuracy and damage. Fire Cape, Amulet of Fury, Zamorak Blessing, weapon and offhand are going to be the Arclight and the Dragon Defender, Guthan's Chestplate, Guthan's Chain Skirt, Barrow's Gloves, Dragon Boots, and a Berserker's Ring imbued. Over in the inventory, we have the Guthan's Helmet and Spear to complete that set for healing off of the minions once Krill is dead. We have a Bandos Godsword to lower the defense. Now the Arclight does lower by 10%. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but if you do successfully hit one of those special attacks, it's only going to take 27 defense levels away from Krill, so you do have a much higher chance to hit a lot higher than that with the Bandos Godsword. So if you have it, bring it. If not, you can rely on the Arclight special attack. 3 Anglerfish. Once again, 8 super combats, the divine ones to keep your stats boosted for 5 minutes per dose. 11 super restore potions, and 2 Ceradome and Brews just in case you get into a pinch. With lesser gear, you might find yourself just taking a little bit more damage, but most likely your Guthans and the food drops you get from the boss and the minions will probably help you out. And last but not least, in the rune pouch, once again, Earth's, Waters, and Astral runes to share your super restore and super combat potions with your team if needed. Total gear cost for this one is going to be 15.6 million, but if you don't have that Bandos God Sword, that easily drops down to around 5.6 million. So really very affordable to come to the Zamorak God Wars Dungeon boss with your friends, even with just very, very mediocre gear. So that's it. Last thing I want to say for this video, obviously there are upgrades from the bottom tier all the way up to the best in slot. Whenever you have something or the ability to use something else, just go ahead and replace the item that you see in this guide with that better item. For example, Amulet of Fury with an Amulet of Torture, or Dragon Boots with the Primordial Boots. So, upgrades are pretty self-explanatory. So that's going to be it, guys, for the Zamorak God Wars Dungeon boss gear guide. I hope that you have learned something, and I hope if you're trying to check out gear to see what you need to get here, that this has helped you out. If you haven't done so yet, please tap that subscribe button on your way out. And if you liked the video, you can leave a thumbs up down below. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to get to everything that I can. You can also leave those down below. I will see you guys on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.